We were five friends bound by the common goal of finishing our degrees without breaking the bank. When the opportunity arose to rent an old building downtown for a fraction of the usual price, excitement overshadowed any lingering doubts. The building, a relic from the early 20th century, stood tall with its weathered brick facade and ornate ironwork. It had character, or so we thought. The day of the move was bright and clear, a stark contrast to the foreboding presence the building seemed to exude. We arrived with boxes stacked high, each one packed with essentials and memories. As we entered, the heavy wooden door creaked loudly, echoing through the empty halls. The lobby was surprisingly spacious, with a grand staircase that spiraled upward, inviting us to explore our new home. Our first task was to set up our individual apartments. I took the room on the third floor, overlooking the narrow alley below. As I unpacked, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. The building was silent, save for the occasional drip of a leaky faucet or the distant hum of traffic. My roommates were busy arranging furniture in their spaces, chatting animatedly about their plans for the semester. As evening approached, we gathered in the common area to unwind. The large windows offered a view of the city lights, but the dim interior cast long shadows that danced along the walls. We laughed and shared stories, the initial tension easing as the night wore on. It was then that the first oddity made itself known. A soft whisper, barely audible, seemed to float through the corridor outside. We paused, listening, but the sound vanished as quickly as it appeared. Brushing it off as our imagination, we continued our evening. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the building settled with a series of groans and creaks. The floorboards seemed to sigh under the weight of unseen footsteps, and every now and then, a door would swing open on its own. I tried to sleep, but the sounds kept me awake, each noise amplifying my unease. The next morning, we met for breakfast, discussing the strange occurrences. Some of us dismissed it as the building adjusting to its new inhabitants, while others felt a growing sense of unease. Anna, one of our friends, seemed particularly affected. She mentioned feeling like someone was watching her, her eyes darting nervously around the room. We reassured her, but the doubt lingered. Days turned into weeks, and the peculiarities became more frequent. Items would disappear and reappear in different places, and the shadows in the hallways seemed to move just beyond the edge of our vision. The once charming building now felt oppressive, its history hidden behind layers of dust and forgotten memories. Yet, despite the unsettling signs, we stayed, driven by the practicality of affordable rent and the bond of friendship. One night, as we were settling in for another restless evening, the power flickered and went out, plunging the building into darkness. The silence was absolute, a stark contrast to the usual ambient noises. In that stillness, I thought I heard footsteps approaching my door. My heart raced as I reached for my phone to use the flashlight, but the battery was dead. Panic set in as the footsteps grew louder, then stopped abruptly. I mustered the courage to peek through the peephole, but all I saw was an empty hallway. Relieved yet shaken, I returned to my bed, unable to shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The building that once promised a fresh start now seemed to hold secrets we were only beginning to uncover. As we lay in our respective rooms that night, the whispers returned, more insistent and closer than before. It was clear that our move was just the beginning of something much darker. The building had chosen us, and whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back. The initial excitement of moving into the old building began to wane as the days settled into a monotonous routine. Classes, studying, and the occasional outing kept us occupied, but the undercurrent of unease lingered beneath our daily interactions. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with small disturbances that one might easily dismiss as quirks of an aging structure. It was Anna who first noticed something was off. She was unpacking her books in her room when she reached for a novel, only to find it missing from the shelf. Moments later, it reappeared on the desk, as if it had never been moved. At first, we laughed it off, attributing it to forgetfulness or the chaos of settling in. However, when similar incidents began to occur more frequently, our skepticism started to fade. One evening, as I was organizing my clothes, a single sock vanished from the laundry basket. I turned around to find it lying neatly folded on the chair across the room. Puzzled, I looked around, half expecting someone to confess to the odd rearrangements. But our group was otherwise busy with their own tasks. The dismissive explanations we offered each other felt increasingly hollow as the occurrences continued. The building's lighting seemed to play tricks on us too. Lights in the common areas would flicker sporadically, casting unsettling shadows that danced along the walls. During one such instance, the hallway lights dimmed to a low, eerie glow, making the long corridor appear endless and warped. We joked nervously about the haunted building, but the humor quickly dissolved when shadows seemed to move independently of any source. Shadows became a recurring theme in our experiences. Late at night, in the quiet moments before sleep, we would catch fleeting glimpses of dark figures lingering just out of sight. Whether it was in the reflection of a window or the corner of our eyes, these silhouettes always vanished when we tried to look directly at them. The sensation of being watched became almost constant, with each of us feeling eyes on us even when we were alone in our rooms. One particularly unsettling night, the disturbances escalated. As I was getting ready for bed, I noticed that the reflection in my mirror didn't match my movements. When I raised my hand, it stayed still in the glass while mine moved. Heart pounding, I stared at my reflection, willing it to respond, but it remained unyielding. I backed away slowly, feeling a chill crawl up my spine, and quickly shut off the lights, leaving the room in oppressive darkness. The incidents began to take a toll on our mental state. Conversations often veered towards the strange happenings, with some of us growing increasingly paranoid. Sleep became elusive as the building seemed to prey on our vulnerabilities, amplifying our fears during the silent hours. Anna, in particular, became withdrawn, her anxiety levels soaring as she struggled with the constant feeling of being observed. Despite the growing tension, we tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Study sessions were held in the common area, and we made efforts to support each other through the unsettling experiences. However, the more we tried to ignore the oddities, the more persistent they became. Items would not only disappear and reappear, but also seem to change their condition. Books left open to specific pages, clothes neatly folded in unconventional ways, and personal belongings subtly rearranged. One afternoon, as I was returning from class, I found my laptop missing from the table where I had left it. Panic set in as I searched the apartment, retracing my steps, but it was nowhere to be found. When I returned to the common area, there it was, placed carefully on the kitchen counter as if it had never moved. The unnerving precision of its return left me unsettled, questioning whether someone, or something, was intentionally toying with us. Our bond as friends began to fray under the strain of the unexplained events. Suspicion crept in, with each of us grappling with the fear that we might be losing our grasp on reality. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, a determination to uncover the truth about the building started to take root. We knew something was deeply wrong, and the growing list of unexplained phenomena left little doubt that we were dealing with more than just the natural wear and tear of an old structure. As the days continued to pass, the atmosphere within the building grew heavier, each small disturbance adding to the mounting tension. The initial charm of our new home was overshadowed by the creeping dread that something unseen was gradually asserting its presence. We were beginning to realize that moving into the building was not just a financial decision, but the first step into a nightmare we couldn't yet comprehend. As the weeks passed, the initial disturbances evolved into something far more unsettling. Each night, precisely at midnight, the building underwent a transformation that none of us could have anticipated. The usual hum of city life, the distant sounds of traffic, and the comforting noises of our daily routines all vanished, plunging the building into an eerie silence that seemed to press down on us like a heavy blanket. The first few nights were disorienting. We would hear the clock strike 12, followed by an abrupt stillness that made every second stretch interminably. Conversations that had once filled our common areas were replaced by an oppressive quiet. Even the faint sounds of footsteps in the hallways ceased, leaving us to grapple with the unnerving absence of sound. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. During these silent nights, an overwhelming sense of isolation took hold. The silence was not just the absence of noise. It was a tangible presence that seemed to seep into every corner of our lives. The darkness outside our windows felt thicker, and the shadows in our rooms grew longer and more menacing. The stillness amplified our fears, making the smallest movements or sounds feel magnified and threatening. Whispers began to permeate the silence, soft and indistinct, barely audible but impossible to ignore. At first, we dismissed them as our minds playing tricks on us, the stress of the situation manifesting in our subconscious. However, the whispers persisted, growing slightly louder each night. They seemed to come from all directions, echoing through the empty corridors and slipping through the cracks of our doors. The words were unclear, mere fragments of sentences that left us with an overwhelming sense of dread. Anna, already on edge from the earlier disturbances, found the silent nights particularly harrowing. She reported seeing fleeting shadows at the edge of her vision, always just out of focus, and feeling an invisible presence lingering in her room. Her anxiety deepened, and she became more withdrawn, her fear palpable to the rest of us. We tried to comfort her, but the pervasive silence made it difficult to break the oppressive atmosphere that had settled over the building. One night, I decided to confront the silence head-on. Armed with a flashlight, I ventured into the hallway, hoping to find some rational explanation for the phenomena. The beam of light cut through the darkness, revealing the old wallpaper peeling from the walls and the cracks in the floorboards. As I walked, the whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a ghostly wind. Every step I took echoed unnaturally, the sound bouncing off the empty walls in a disorienting pattern. I reached the end of the hallway, where a heavy wooden door stood slightly ajar. Pushing it open, I found myself in a room that looked identical to my own, except for one unsettling detail. Everything inside was perfectly still, untouched by time. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, and the whispers converged into a cacophony of indistinguishable voices. My flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced menacingly around the room. Heart pounding, I backed away from the door, the oppressive silence enveloping me once more. As I turned to leave, I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, a sensation that sent shivers down my spine. I didn't look back, sprinting down the hallway until I reached the safety of my apartment. The encounter left me shaken, reinforcing the unsettling reality that something malevolent was at work within the building. The silent nights continued, each one more unnerving than the last. The whispers became more coherent, hints of past tragedies and unspoken fears woven into their ethereal tones. We began to realize that the silence was not merely a natural occurrence, but a deliberate manifestation of the building's dark history. The oppressive quiet seemed to feed on our fears, creating an environment where our vulnerabilities were laid bare. Sleep became a rare commodity, as the silent nights eroded our sense of security. The absence of noise made every creak and groan of the building more pronounced, each sound a reminder that we were not alone. The whispers invaded our dreams, blending reality and nightmare in a way that left us questioning our sanity. The once charming apartment now felt like a trap, each silent night tightening the grip of fear around us. Despite the growing tension, we clung to each other for support. Late-night discussions in the common area became our refuge, a place to share our fears and piece together the puzzle of the building's mysteries. We began to suspect that the silence was connected to the shadowy figures we had been seeing, their presence somehow intertwined with the oppressive quiet that enveloped the building each night. The silent nights marked a turning point in our ordeal, transforming our living situation from mere discomfort to a relentless psychological battle. The combination of absolute silence and the haunting whispers created a perfect storm of fear and uncertainty. We were no longer just dealing with unexplained occurrences. We were confronting an entity that thrived on our anxiety and isolation, determined to keep its secrets hidden in the depths of the old building. As each silent night passed, the weight of the building's dark presence bore down on us, pushing us to the brink of despair. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, a resolve began to form. We knew that to survive, we had to uncover the truth behind the building's sinister past. The silent nights were a constant reminder that something was terribly wrong, and only by facing the darkness head-on could we hope to reclaim our lives and restore peace to our home. The oppressive silence that dominated our nights began to seep into every aspect of our daily lives. We moved through our routines with a growing sense of unease, each small disturbance reinforcing the feeling that the building was more than just an old structure. It was during one of these unsettling weeks that the elevators started to reveal their own dark secrets. It began innocuously enough. One afternoon, as I returned from a long day of classes, I pressed the elevator button on the first floor. The doors slid open smoothly, and I stepped inside, ready to ascend to my apartment. As the elevator began its ascent, the lights flickered briefly before stabilizing. The ride was uneventful, and I reached my floor without incident. But the next day, the same elevator ride took a sinister turn. I was rushing to meet a study group when I entered the elevator, my mind preoccupied with assignments and deadlines. As the doors closed, the lights dimmed unusually low, casting long, distorted shadows across the cramped space. The elevator began to move, but instead of stopping at my floor, it ascended higher than necessary, passing the 12th floor. My heart raced as the numbers on the display climbed to floors that didn't exist in our building. The ride felt interminable, each second stretching into eternity. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors opened to reveal a dimly lit corridor that certainly wasn't part of our building's layout. The hallway was narrow, lined with doors that seemed to stretch into darkness. Panic surged through me as I stepped out, finding myself in an unfamiliar and unsettling part of the building. The corridor was silent except for the faint echoes of distant whispers, and the air was thick with an inexplicable tension. I hurried back to the elevator, desperate to return to my floor, but the doors wouldn't open. The light flickered once more before plunging the space into complete darkness. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to navigate the eerie corridor until I finally found my way back to our apartment. Shaken, I recounted the experience to my friends, but they were skeptical, dismissing it as a malfunction. However, my skepticism quickly vanished when similar incidents began to occur. Anna was the next to encounter the phantom elevator. Late one night, she needed to use the bathroom and called for the elevator. As she stepped inside, the doors closed with a heavy thud. The elevator moved normally for a few floors, but then it inexplicably descended beyond the ground floor, stopping abruptly at an unmarked level. The doors opened to reveal an empty, dark lobby that felt unnaturally cold. Anna froze, feeling an unseen presence watching her from the shadows. She hurried back into the elevator, which immediately began to rise again, returning her safely to her floor. The experience left her visibly shaken, her anxiety deepening as the unexplained elevator behavior continued. We decided to investigate the elevators, hoping to find a logical explanation for the disturbances. The building manager assured us that the elevators were regularly maintained and that such behavior was impossible. Yet every time we used them, they defied normal operation, taking us to places that didn't exist and trapping us in eerie, otherworldly spaces. The notion that the elevators were conduits to another dimension or realm began to take root in our minds, heightening our fear and suspicion. One evening, determined to uncover the truth, we gathered in the common area to discuss our options. The group was tense, each of us grappling with the reality that our living situation had become a gateway to something sinister. Anna suggested researching the building's history to see if there were any reports of supernatural activity or past tragedies that might explain the phenomena. The others agreed, hoping that uncovering the building's past might provide answers or a way to stop the disturbances. As we delved into old records and spoke with longtime residents, we discovered that the building had a troubled history. Decades ago, several residents had mysteriously disappeared, and rumors of hauntings had circulated for years. The elevators had always been a point of contention, with stories of unexplained stops and eerie occurrences long before we moved in. It became clear that the building itself was a vessel for unresolved spirits, and the elevators were their means of traversing the boundaries between worlds. Armed with this knowledge, we began to piece together a pattern. The phantom elevator rides coincided with the times when the building was the quietest, amplifying the silence and making our experiences even more intense. We realized that the elevators weren't just malfunctioning. They were actively connecting us to the building's dark past. Each ride became a journey into the unknown, exposing us to the lingering presence of those who had vanished before us. The more we learned, the more we understood that escaping the building wouldn't be as simple as finding a new place to live. The elevators had become a focal point of the building's supernatural energy, and breaking free from their influence required confronting the spirits that haunted us. The realization was daunting, but it also ignited a spark of determination within us. We couldn't let fear dictate our lives. We had to find a way to reclaim our home and protect ourselves from the malevolent forces at play. As the days turned into nights, the elevators continued to challenge our sanity. Each ride became a test of our courage and resilience, pushing us to the brink of what we could endure. The building's presence loomed over us, its dark history entwining with our own lives in a relentless grip. Yet, amidst the fear and uncertainty, a sense of unity began to form. We were no longer just friends sharing a living space. We were a team bound by a common mission to uncover the truth and survive the horrors of the mysterious building. The phantom elevators were a constant reminder of the battle we were facing, each ride a harrowing experience that tested our limits. But with every terrifying encounter, our resolve strengthened. We knew that to survive, we had to delve deeper into the building's secrets, facing the darkness head-on. The elevators had become more than just a mode of transportation. They were gateways to our survival, and navigating them was crucial to unraveling the mysteries that held us captive in the old, haunted building. The relentless disturbances had taken their toll on us, each day blending into the next under the oppressive atmosphere of the old building. Our attempts to maintain normalcy were constantly undermined by the unexplained phenomena that seemed to grow in intensity. It was during one of these tense weeks that the shadows began to take on a more sinister form. It started subtly, with fleeting glimpses of dark figures just beyond the reach of our vision. In the corners of our eyes, we would catch movements that vanished when we turned to look directly. At first, we dismissed these sightings as tricks of the light or our minds playing games with us. However, as the occurrences became more frequent and distinct, our skepticism waned, replaced by a growing sense of unease. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the building settled into its nightly silence, Anna was the first to notice something truly unsettling. She was returning from a late study session, her footsteps echoing softly in the hallway. As she passed by my apartment, she froze, her eyes wide with fear. In the dim light, a shadowy figure stood at the end of the corridor, its form barely defined but undeniably human. Anna blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving her heart pounding in her chest. Concerned for her well-being, the group gathered in the common area to discuss the latest sighting. The tension in the room was palpable, each of us grappling with the reality that we were not alone in the building. We decided to keep a closer watch on each other, hoping that solidarity would help us cope with the mounting fear. That night, as the clock struck midnight and the building fell into its familiar silence, the shadows returned with renewed intensity. We lay in our respective rooms, the darkness pressing in around us, when a loud crash echoed from the hallway. Startled, we rushed to the common area, only to find nothing out of place. The lights flickered momentarily before stabilizing, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to writhe and twist along the walls. Determined to understand what was happening, We began to document each strange occurrence, noting the times, locations, and descriptions of the shadows. Patterns started to emerge, suggesting that the figures were not random, but were somehow connected to specific areas of the building. The corridors became our focus, their labyrinthine layout hiding secrets that we were desperate to uncover. One night, driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, we decided to follow the shadows. Armed with flashlights and a sense of cautious determination, we ventured into the dimly lit hallways, the oppressive silence amplifying every sound. The shadows seemed to dance just out of sight, leading us deeper into the building's heart. Our footsteps echoed unnaturally loud, each step heightening our anxiety as we navigated the maze-like corridors. As we moved further away from our apartments, the shadows grew bolder, occasionally coalescing into more defined shapes. A figure would linger at the end of a hallway, only to dissolve into the darkness when we approached. The air grew colder, each breath visible in the dim light, and the walls seemed to close in around us, heightening the sense of being watched. In one particularly narrow corridor, the shadows converged into a more substantial form, a tall, indistinct figure that seemed to absorb the light around it. We froze, the tension thick as we stared at the apparition, unsure of how to react. The figure remained silent, its presence oppressive and unyielding. Suddenly, it moved, gliding down the hallway with an unnatural grace, disappearing into the depths of the building. We stood there, shaken and unsure of what we had just witnessed, the reality of our situation sinking in. Returning to the common area, we shared our experiences, the fear and uncertainty binding us closer together. It became clear that the shadows were more than just random manifestations. They were sentient, interacting with us in ways that defied explanation. The building itself seemed to come alive with these dark entities, each shadow a fragment of its troubled past. Anna suggested that the shadows might be connected to the building's history, possibly remnants of the residents who had vanished long ago. We agreed that uncovering the truth about the shadows was essential to understanding the malevolent force that had taken hold of our home. Our research led us to old newspapers, property records, and interviews with former tenants, each piece of information adding to the growing puzzle. We discovered that the building had a dark legacy, with numerous reports of unexplained disappearances and strange occurrences dating back decades. Stories of restless spirits and tragic events began to surface, painting a picture of a place haunted by unresolved anguish and sorrow. The shadows we were encountering were likely the lingering spirits of those who had once lived here, their presence a constant reminder of the building's haunted past. Determined to confront the shadows, we decided to hold a gathering in the common area, hoping to communicate with the entities that plagued us. As midnight approached, we lit candles and arranged ourselves in a circle, creating a semblance of ritualistic protection. The room grew colder, the shadows lengthening and intertwining around us, their presence almost tangible. We spoke softly, reaching out to the spirits in hopes of understanding their unrest. The air thickened with tension, and the shadows seemed to respond, swirling around us in a dance of silent communication. Anna, her voice trembling, asked the questions we all wanted answers to, seeking to uncover the reasons behind the haunting. In that moment, the oppressive silence was broken by a chorus of whispers, their voices blending into an unintelligible murmur that filled the room. The shadows intensified, their forms becoming more defined as if trying to convey a message. We listened intently, trying to decipher the meaning behind the ethereal voices and the restless movements of the shadows. As the minutes stretched on, the atmosphere grew heavier, the boundaries between our reality and the supernatural blurring. We felt a profound connection to the spirits, their sorrow and frustration seeping into our very beings. It was clear that the shadows were not malevolent in the traditional sense, but rather tormented souls trapped within the building, yearning for resolution and peace. Exhausted and emotionally drained, we ended the seance, the shadows receding into the darkness once more. The experience left us with a deeper understanding of the building's haunting, but also a renewed determination to help the spirits find peace. We knew that uncovering the truth about the shadows was only the beginning, and that the path ahead would require courage and resilience. The shadows in the corridors had revealed a glimpse of the building's tragic history, binding us further to the mystery that enveloped our home. As we retreated to our apartments, the weight of our discovery settled upon us, reinforcing the reality that we were entwined in a struggle far beyond our understanding. The shadows were a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked within the old building, and we knew that to survive, we had to confront the spirits that haunted us and uncover the secrets that kept them bound to this place. The shadows that haunted our corridors had become an ever-present reminder of the building's sinister nature. Each night, their silent presence gnawed at our sense of security, pushing us to seek answers beyond the immediate disturbances. Determined to understand the root of our torment, we turned our attention to uncovering the building's history. Our first step was to visit the local library, a treasure trove of old newspapers, property records, and archive documents. The librarian, an elderly woman with a stern demeanor, initially hesitated to assist us. When we explained our situation, her expression softened, and she led us to a secluded section filled with historical records of the city. We pored over old maps, tenant lists, and newspaper clippings, hoping to find any mention of unusual events or tragedies that had occurred within the building. Days turned into nights as we delved deeper into our research. We discovered that the building, constructed in the early 1900s, had always been known for its architectural beauty and affordability. However, beneath its elegant exterior lay a series of dark secrets. Several tenants had reported strange noises, unexplained disappearances, and eerie sightings long before we moved in. The most troubling accounts dated back to the 1950s, a period marked by a series of mysterious events that seemed to culminate in a series of unexplained deaths. One article detailed the tragic story of a family who had lived in the building for decades. The parents, seemingly ordinary individuals, had become increasingly withdrawn and paranoid before disappearing without a trace. Their children, left behind, spoke of seeing shadowy figures in their home and hearing voices that no one else could hear. The police investigation had yielded no clues, and the case had gone cold, leaving the building's reputation tainted by whispers of hauntings and curses. Another document referenced a fire that had broken out in one of the upper floors in the 1970s. While the fire was officially ruled accidental, several survivors claimed that the flames seemed to move unnaturally, as if guided by an unseen force. Witnesses reported seeing ghostly apparitions amidst the smoke and hearing cries for help that echoed through the burning halls. The building was temporarily closed for repairs, but the incident only deepened the sense of unease surrounding it. As we continued our investigation, we stumbled upon a series of personal letters written by former tenants. These letters painted a picture of a building plagued by inexplicable phenomena and a growing sense of dread among its residents. One letter in particular stood out, a desperate plea from a tenant who claimed that the building was alive, feeding off the fear and suffering of its inhabitants. The writer spoke of dark entities that roamed the hallways, manipulating the environment to torment those who lived there. The more we learned, the more it became clear that the building harbored a malevolent presence, a remnant of the tragedies that had unfolded within its walls. The shadows we encountered were not mere figments of our imagination, but echoes of the pain and anguish that had been left behind. It was as if the building itself was a vessel for the unresolved emotions and suffering of its former occupants, perpetuating a cycle of fear and despair. Armed with this newfound knowledge, we felt a mix of fear and determination. Understanding the building's past was the key to breaking the cycle and freeing ourselves from its grip. We decided to confront the darkness head-on, believing that by addressing the unresolved issues, we could put an end to the hauntings. Our next step was to explore the areas of the building most associated with the tragic events. We focused on the upper floors where the fire had occurred and the apartments previously occupied by the missing family. As we navigated the narrow, dimly lit hallways, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thick with an unspoken tension. Each step felt like a journey deeper into the building's haunted history. In the remnants of the old apartments, we found remnants of the past, burned furniture, charred walls, and personal belongings left behind in haste. It was here that we began to sense a stronger presence, the air growing colder and the shadows more pronounced. The memories of the previous tenants seemed to linger, their sorrow and fear permeating the space. One night, as we gathered in the common area to discuss our findings, Anna shared a breakthrough. She had uncovered a ritual mentioned in one of the letters, believed to appease the restless spirits and bring peace to the tormented souls trapped within the building. The ritual involved acknowledging the suffering of the past and offering a gesture of reconciliation, hoping to cleanse the building of its lingering malevolence. Excited yet apprehensive, we decided to perform the ritual, seeing it as our best chance to reclaim our home. We gathered the necessary items, candles, incense, and a few personal tokens that represented our intentions to help the spirits move on. The night of the ritual, we met in the common area, the room dimly lit by the flickering candles we had arranged in a circle. As we began the ceremony, the atmosphere shifted. The oppressive silence was replaced by a palpable energy, the air vibrating with unseen forces. We spoke the words of reconciliation, acknowledging the pain and suffering that had occurred within the building and expressing our desire to help bring peace to the restless spirits. The candles cast long shadows that seemed to dance and twist around us, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Suddenly, the shadows in the room began to take on more defined forms, swirling around us in a mesmerizing display. We felt a presence, both comforting and sorrowful, as if the spirits were responding to our plea. The whispers that had plagued us for weeks grew louder, their voices intertwining with our words in a haunting chorus. It was as if the building itself was listening, absorbing our intentions, and beginning to shift. For a moment, there was a sense of calm, a brief respite from the constant fear that had consumed us. The shadows seemed to recede, the oppressive energy lifting slightly as if acknowledging our efforts. We felt a glimmer of hope, believing that our actions had made a difference and that the building was slowly beginning to release its hold on the past. However, our hope was short-lived. As the ritual concluded, the atmosphere darkened once more, the shadows returning with renewed intensity. The oppressive silence was shattered by a cacophony of whispers and footsteps, echoing through the hallways like a relentless storm. The shadows now seemed more aggressive, their forms twisting into menacing shapes that loomed over us. Panic set in as we realized that the ritual had not fully appeased the spirits, but perhaps awakened a deeper, more vengeful presence. The building resisted our attempts to cleanse it, the dark history fighting back against our intrusion. The shadows in the corridors became more restless, their movements erratic and unpredictable, reflecting the turmoil within the building's haunted past. Despite the setback, we refused to give up. The secrets of the past had revealed themselves, and with that knowledge came the responsibility to confront the darkness. We knew that understanding the building's history was only the beginning, and that fully resolving the lingering spirits would require unwavering courage and resilience. As the days turned into nights, we continued our quest for answers, determined to break the cycle of fear that had ensnared us. The building's dark legacy was intertwined with our own lives, and we were now bound to uncover its deepest secrets. The shadows in the corridors were a constant reminder of the battles we faced, each day bringing us closer to the truth and further into the heart of the building's haunted existence. The struggle was far from over, but with each revelation, we grew stronger and more united in our mission. The secrets of the past were slowly unraveling, guiding us towards a confrontation that would determine not only our fate, but the fate of the building itself. The path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty, but we were resolved to see it through, no matter the cost. The atmosphere in the building had grown increasingly hostile since our failed ritual. The shadows in the corridors moved with a newfound aggression, their forms twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed intent on tormenting us. Each night brought louder whispers and more intense disturbances, pushing us to the brink of despair. It was clear that the building's malevolent presence was not easily appeased, and that our initial attempts to help the spirits had only intensified the conflict. Determined to find a solution, we reconvened in the common area, the weight of our situation pressing down on us. Anna, still deeply affected by the experiences, suggested that we delve deeper into the building's darkest secrets. We needed to understand not just the history, but the specific events that had given rise to the restless spirits. Our research had provided a broad overview, but we lacked the crucial details that could unlock the key to our salvation. Our investigation led us to the basement, a place we had avoided due to the pervasive sense of dread that emanated from its depths. According to the old letters and newspaper clippings, the basement had been the site of numerous tragic events, including the mysterious disappearances and the fire that had ravaged the upper floors. It was rumored that the basement housed the remnants of forgotten lives, the lingering souls of those who had perished within the building's walls. Armed with flashlights and a renewed sense of purpose, we descended the narrow staircase into the basement. The air grew colder with each step, and the oppressive silence was broken only by the distant drip of water and our own uneasy breaths. The basement was cluttered with old furniture, broken appliances, and stacks of dusty boxes. As we navigated the maze of debris, the shadows seemed to come alive around us, their presence almost suffocating. In the center of the basement stood an old wooden table, scarred by years of use and stained with what appeared to be old blood. Surrounding the table were symbols drawn in chalk, remnants of rituals long forgotten. It was clear that this space had been a focal point for the building's dark energy, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. As we approached the table, the temperature dropped sharply, our breaths visible in the frigid air. Anna pointed to a faded photograph lying on the table. It depicted the family from the 1950s, the same family whose tragic disappearance had been chronicled in our research. Beneath the photograph was a journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. Carefully, we began to read the entries, uncovering the family's desperate attempts to protect themselves from the building's growing darkness. The journal detailed their fear of the shadows and their belief that the building itself was alive, feeding off their fear and suffering. One entry stood out, describing a ritual performed by the family in a last-ditch effort to appease the spirits. They had hoped to seal the malevolent forces within the building, but their efforts had failed, only binding the spirits more tightly to their home. The final entry was a desperate plea for anyone who found the journal to complete the ritual and free the building from its cursed existence. Realizing that the family had attempted something similar to our own ritual, we understood that completing their unfinished work was our only chance to end the nightmare. We decided to perform the ritual exactly as described in the journal, believing that following their instructions precisely would make the difference. The ritual required us to confront the shadows directly, acknowledging their pain and offering our help to release them from their eternal torment. Gathering in the common area once more, we prepared the space according to the journal's instructions. Candles were arranged in a specific pattern, incense burned to cleanse the area, and personal tokens representing our intentions were placed on the table. As midnight approached, the building fell into its usual silence, but this time, there was a sense of anticipation rather than fear.